Hello, I'm Joan Landis, and I'm happy to be with you here again today. So this course is about family relationships and how to have first-rate family relationships. That's, I think, a goal of most of us. And one of the things that are so important to understand is that healthy family relationships give us a great deal of resilience. When we have a good support system, we feel like someone's got our back and we're safe. We feel like that family can be a safe haven for us and a secure base, and that if we're distressed, someone will be there and nurture us and support us. So let's think about how important families really are. Families can really make the difference between a long and prosperous and healthy life and a shorter one that is not as happy and more stressful and have more health problems. Many research studies show that if you're in healthy family relationships, that your health is better, your heart doesn't give you as much problem, you live longer, your happiness, satisfaction is increased. And so knowing that, we say, okay, I get that, but my family relationships are kind of a mess. That's going to shorten my life, is all that stress. And so we want to understand that, there's kind of the hopeful ideal, right? And then there's reality. And so how do we get from here to here? Well, we're going to learn about these things in the next few lessons. And as this takes effort and takes some little changes and in what you're doing, I want you to understand how important your family and your effort towards your family really is. There are many wise leaders who have said things like, make your family the highest priority of your life. And that if your family is the highest priority, that is the way that you show them that you love them. And that's the way you can order your life around those things that are the most meaningful. So you think about it, if you have a career your whole life and that's all you do, at your retirement ceremony, you may get a plaque, you may get a watch, right? But if you have invested in your family and your family relationships and your children and your spouse and your extended family, that you can be surrounded with supportive, loving, rich relationships with amazing memories. And that's so much better than a plaque or a watch, right? And so even though this takes effort, the rewards really are worth it. Okay, so does that mean that every time you throw your efforts into a marriage or a family with children, that everything's going to be hunky-dory? No, that is not true. But we know that those family relationships can give the greatest benefits on many levels and the greatest satisfaction and the greatest joy. And so it's worth the gamble to say, I did my very best to make that marriage a beautiful one. I did my very best to help those children feel loved and supported and put their feet on the right path. Things can happen, that's true. But when we give our best efforts to our families, then the chances of things going south are much diminished. And if they do, you can always take great satisfaction that you did everything in your power to make that a great family. You will not have regrets about your role in that family. So let me tell you a personal story, okay? So I started college at age 17 and had a baby when I was 19. I was married. And then I had my second baby just before I graduated with my bachelor's in clinical psych. And I was all prepared to go on to graduate school and become a psychologist and, work full time and be a career woman and go to California and have, 2.1 children and the whole thing, right? That's what I was prepped for. And so I really brought the matter before God and prayed about it. And the message wasn't just, no, don't do that. It was, heck no, don't do that. And I really try to follow those promptings that I received from my spiritual promptings. And So I said, okay, I won't do that. I'm not going to go out and have a career while I've got little teeny tiny children. Now, one of the blessings I feel like of having the Holy Spirit in your life is that the Holy Spirit can tailor messages for individual people, okay? I wouldn't judge other people, okay? I would just say, for me, that's what the Holy Spirit told me. Do not get into that big heavy career, that big heavy PhD program while you've got little children. And so I really, I went through a tough year because I went from, oh my gosh, you're so smart and you're such a great researcher and you're straight A's and, all that stuff to like suddenly, whoop, full-time mother and little kids that are crying and they need my attention all the time. I was a very young mother, so your patience just isn't as much as when you get older, I hope. And so it was a tough year. I did a lot of crying. It was hard because I had to disconnect from all of those external rewards and I had to develop internal coping methods, internal self-validation that said that these little munchkins were worth my very best effort. And so I can tell you, I can testify from my own experience now on the other end of that. Knowing what I know about attachment and how important attachment, those fundamental early attachments are, that they really cannot be redone. Knowing some of those things, I myself am so glad that I was able and humble enough to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to not have that big career path when my little children are small. And I'm going to do what I was prompted to do, make those sacrifices. And it's interesting because I learned to find joy in the little things, okay? And I learned to self-validate from inside myself. And I learned to really attach with my children much better. Now, I'm not I'm a little bit avoidant in my attachments. There's no question about it. I think that's why I was comfortable with this idea of going and being some big professor somewhere. But I learned to change my attachment style a little bit because I got to practice with these darling children. And I went ahead and had, 5 more children. And, it's kind of like, they're so cute. I want to collect all 7. And so, it was really interesting because, boy, did I see from the other end how much my children needed me. And I was willing to put my best effort into that. Now, has everything turned out perfectly? How do you define perfectly? I actually don't think, we can really properly judge the success of our family for about 500 years, okay? I think we're all a work in progress. My family, I'm ecstatic about, absolutely ecstatic about. And as children have had struggles and tried to figure things out, there have been times when I have just had to say to myself, I am so grateful that I did everything I could to be there for my kids. And if they're struggling this way or that way, honestly, I can say, of course I wasn't perfect, but I did the best I could. I didn't purposely, put them on a back shelf and pursue things when they had these intense needs as little children. So interestingly enough, as they grow up, all right, now I can pursue some of this stuff, right? Life is not over at 45. So I just want to encourage you to understand the importance of family, and hopefully that mothers and fathers can put their family as a very high priority. It doesn't mean that you don't do anything else. No, that's not what I'm saying. But it is if it can be possible, make it your highest priority. If you're a single mom or dad and you're taking care of the kids, your highest priority is your family when you're going out and getting work to support them. That is the highest priority in your family. Is you have to support them. And so, as you just be thoughtful and meditate and be really honest about, am I putting my family first? Am I putting my best efforts into my family? Just think about that carefully. Now, we're not trying to make you feel guilty because you're not sewing their underwear. I mean, that's not what I'm talking about. but is your heart there with your children and your spouse? Because just because you're home does not mean that you are connected, right? We know that. And just because you're away doesn't mean you're disconnected. There's ways that you can do some of this. The main thing is your heart has to be in the right place. You have to be thinking in terms of, how do I put my family first? And I want you to think very carefully about that, because the family is going to be, yes, your biggest source of angst, but it's those things that give us the most pain that also give us the most what? Joy. And so don't ever be afraid to put your very best effort in your family, because the chances are that will be the most important thing you ever do. I know that's how I feel about my children and my husband and my family. It is the most important thing that I've ever done and will ever do. So just think carefully about where your family falls in your list of priorities, and just think about bumping it up a few, okay? And think about, wow, how can that be the first on my list instead of a distant third? All right? So I hope this has been helpful for you, and see you on the forums. Talk to us about how you're putting the priority a little bit higher, but not feeling guilty about things that aren't really crucial. We'll talk a little more about that later. Anyway, it's been great. See you soon. Thanks. Bye.